building beautiful simulations for universities, nonprofits, and mental health professionals with some of the platforms in virtual reality. It feels like you're on a beach, a beautiful snowy mountain, or other relaxing places. These platforms are used to assist relaxation during the appointment while the therapist conducts their session.
Welcome to Awakening Soul Divinity, your sacred space for deep healing and transformation. Listen to inspiring conversations with healing experts, spiritual guides, and teachers as we explore ancient wisdom, modern healing, and powerful stories of change. I'll also share practical insights from my personal journey, from spiritual crisis to inner purpose. Whether you're seeking to overcome anxiety, embrace your true nature, or awaken your higher self, this podcast offers guidance to help you transform your life and elevate collective consciousness.
So this is Terrance. Welcome, Terrance.
Hello.
Hi, I'm really excited that you decided to join me on this journey.
Yeah.
This stuff's so cool. I don't get into it much, but
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, great. That's awesome. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. So let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely.
So could you briefly share like a catalyst or adversity or a challenging experience or trauma or something that led you onto the path that you're on today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it would start with my grandmother. She was very dear to my family, like a best friend for me, definitely a best friend even to my dad. And around the time I was around 13 or 14, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and it was very, very hard. She progressed very, very rapidly, very quickly. And on her last days, I remember the hospital calling and speaking to my father, basically saying like last goodbyes. He didn't know it was going to be that time for her. But during that conversation, she didn't remember who he was. And I just saw the impact, how it had on him, on the look on his face when she didn't remember his name. And that was really the start. I was really interested in how this issue, this disease can affect something so personal for people, which would be our memory. And just was really interested on that and how I can learn more about how I can really help with just mental health and things of that nature. So that's where it really started from.
Wow. So can you give us an idea? I'm going to go into it a little bit more later. I'll ask you again in a different way, but how was your personal healing journey that you and your father went through? How did that shape the work that you're doing now to support other people?
Yeah, during the time we were really big on just understanding, the mental health aspect. So we started doing a lot of walks for Alzheimer's, things of that nature, trying to get out there, get the voice stuff out there more. And my dad is still really big on supporting foundations when it comes to those type of things. I was really interested in more because I was always really big into technology. So me understanding how can technology and mental health really benefit each other and try to work.
Wow.
So I started really diving into how those different things are possible. So I stumbled on things like virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and I just wanted to learn more about it. So the effect of my grandmother dying really just had a spiral effect on, okay, I'm really into technology, but now I'm really into mental health. And it kind of just spiraled into what it is today.
Wow. And I'm curious about something, the timing, because when we were going through the pandemic, a lot of mental health professionals and people, like I did it too as a coach, we went online. So I mean that's not virtual reality, but it's more virtual reality than it was sitting, in an office. So what was the time frame that all this happened? Was it in part of that, or did you get the inspiration from that, or was it before, or how did that?
Yeah, so it was probably before COVID. I was already still into technology and I was already learning how to do things with it. I think COVID, it really just made the awareness of telehealth, telemental health just more relevant. So you started hearing about just a lot of people doing sessions on Zooms, things of that nature. And so they started becoming very popular. And it's actually, because of COVID, I would say it's probably still really popular doing these type of interactions today.
Mhm.
And so the next step would be virtual reality, which you're actually with that person in a virtual setting doing the same things you would do via Zoom, but you're doing it where you feel like you're face to face with those people.
Yeah, and I think it would be kind of like, as you're saying that, I'm imagining how, it's kind of, well, it depends on the therapist's office or who you're working with as to how comfortable the setting is. But it seems like with the extra layer of trauma that was going on during the pandemic, that it gave, like, having that virtual reality of being on a beach setting, or being in the mountains or whatever. I feel like that would have been a huge help to, like, give a layer of comfort and peace, and just something that would calm people
Yeah.
down a little bit while we were doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely had its spike during COVID as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just started really paying more attention to it when like larger corporations like Meta and Apple, Google all started diving into more virtual reality. And this was all around the time like now AI is being brought up, and this was around crypto. So it was a really technological boom, like I would say right during COVID, right after it. So it all really just did help during that time frames because people were looking for that space to like look for healing, look for different things because they couldn't leave their house. So they had to figure out ways to really find that. People that were attending churches weren't able to go to church, so they were going to church online. So it all just had a spiral effect, and people saw that, oh yeah, we can really do or get a lot out of doing things virtually. So as you see, it's now growing and growing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how did watching the Alzheimer's and your grandmother affect you personally? If you can go a little bit deeper, and how were you able to move past it for yourself?
Yeah, so with my family, it was pretty hard for us because our grandmother was pretty much like the pillar of the family. So
Hmm.
it was really really important to really be there for each other. In a lot of situations we didn't really talk about it as much. We understood what happened. And because I was around 13 or 14, a lot of different conversations weren't taking place, like the funeral date, all those different things didn't happen. But for me, I saw that it affected my father per se because that was his best friend. So watching him just even being emotional, being sad about losing his best friend, his mother, was pretty hard. But we took action to do things like we just started doing walks, started supporting foundations. So I think all of that helped putting our energy into better use.
Yeah, and it sounds like, I mean, for a 13, 14-year-old to watch something like this, I mean, it's hard enough as an adult to deal with watching the decline, but for a 13 or 14-year-old, I mean, you're just now coming into your trying to figure yourself out. And for someone to be that close to you, to be affected by that, couldn't have been an easy experience for you. I mean, it sounds like it was pretty rough, I
Yeah.
would imagine.
Well, yeah, because growing. I mean, I guess this may be true for adults as well, but you don't really know the importance or the effects of how serious something is until it actually affects your life. So before she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I had never heard of it before, so I didn't understand the symptoms, the problems, the mental strain, different things that come with it. I understand, like you understand, you hear like losing memory and stuff like that, but you don't see the effects until that person doesn't really remember your name. So that type of stuff is hard.
Yeah. So you had mentioned Sonia. Is that another mental health illness that you have witnessed? And can you share a little bit about what that was?
Yeah, so Sonia was I was in high school, so I was probably like 17 or 18. So this is probably like 5 years after that, my grandmother's situation. Sonia was a good friend of mine. We went to high school together. She
Mm,
was on the girls' basketball team. I was on the guys' basketball team. I would see her probably every day, um, or at least once a week because or twice a week because of practices and games and things of that nature. So every time I see her, I would say hi to her. We would have conversation. Um, even when I went to college, she attended the same college as me. So I saw her during college. I helped her with her women's basketball team. We would talk and stay friends there as well. And I remember like the week before she decided to like self delete, that she ended up because I just spoke with her that week before, and she seemed happy. And then a week after that, I guess she ended up self deleting herself. So it was more of a shock. And I remember the feeling of when my friend called me and he told me, it was kind of like a disbelief. Like, no, I just spoke to that person last week. But yeah, so when that happened, it was more of a shock and a hurt. You always ask yourself if there's something that you could have done in those situations. But and it kind of taught me on the mental health side that there's a lot of people that are suffering from mental health that you would never know just by having conversations with them. So it's always good to just recheck, even ask somebody, "Are you okay?" And when you ask them, "Are you okay?" like literally, like how are you mentally? You can see how people are looking like physically on the outside, but with the mental health aspect, you don't know how they're feeling on the inside.
No, no, and that's interesting that you brought that up too. I want to go circle back to your friend. But like anyone with PTSD or any kind of mental health issue, it is not, for the most part, that hard to show up with the appearance of being happy in life. It's not that hard because I
Right,
did that too, you know.
right.
And you can slap a smile on your face and make everybody think it's okay. But, for me, I didn't like asking for help. I didn't like, I knew personally, from my own experience of helping other people, I was fine with that. Right. And I think we all get caught up in that. But, and you use the word self delete with Sonia. I've never heard that phrase before. The new phrase that I've heard is, what is the new phrase that they say? There's like,
Cancellation.
no, 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 it's not committing because people don't commit a suicide, but there's another word people use. Uh, Shoot, I even did a video of this like a couple of years ago. I can't remember. Anyway, so like when people get to that point in their lives, it's usually my feeling about it is it's usually because it's just like there's nothing left. Like everything just seems to not be available to them. And it's more to, again, like a helpless, kind of hopeless, nobody wants me around or, whatever. And if we show up as we're okay, and most people aren't aware, they don't see the subtle signs around people who are feeling that way. So you can't, like, I'm usually pretty good, but a lot of times with people who are in that space, it's not easy because they're really good at hiding it.
Hmm.
But I'm usually pretty good at picking up on people's energies and feeling what they're feeling. So I can ask them if they're okay. But like you said, it's like, um, how do you help someone like that if you really don't even know? And the other piece that you brought up was the fact that you couldn't have done anything about it.
Hmm.
Or like, did you feel guilty about not being able to do anything for her?
I don't necessarily think it was guilt, but it was more of what could I have done to, have helped that pain that she may have been feeling during that time.
Yeah, yeah,
And it could have been as simple. I think literally, I think the solution is if everybody, kind of goes to the mindset of really asking just anybody who they're connected with, "Are you okay?"
well,
Because
yeah,
that could be the one conversation that could possibly save a life. So you
yeah,
never know what other people are going through. So
absolutely, yeah. But the what could I have done piece, I want to touch on that and then come back to that part of it. But in all reality, in all actuality, to me, I don't know if there really is much that someone can do to shift that for somebody if they're in that in themselves, if that makes sense. It's really challenging. So a lot of people ask that, what I could have done more, or what could I have done, or whatever, and then they take the blame for not being able to save that person. So I
yeah.
just want to put that out there, that even that's not on you. That's something that this is like a huge, huge unfortunate choice that somebody makes, because everyone's here for purpose. Everyone's here to work together, to support each other, to find their own self-love and their self-value and be able to put that into the world. And when you don't know how to do that because you've never been shown that or had experiences that dragged you into this type of, desire to want to do that, then that's the piece. It's like I feel like, and you, I want to hear your side of this. But it's like I feel like if there was an underlying way of of raising people to not feel the way they feel, to even want to consider doing something like that. It starts in childhood. It doesn't, all that stuff starts in childhood, the way we teach our children, right?
Yeah.
So does that resonate?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it can it cannot also start within childhood. So like a lot of it, such situations, it does start there. But then a lot of people will go into situations where they've had, what would be the status quo of what was like considered to be a good childhood, but they end up going into a series of different things that, and I'll give you an example. So when I was at VCU, I was feeding the homeless, helping this church feed the homeless every Sunday. So I would go there every Sunday before I go to breakfast, and I would help the church feed this homeless. And there was this one guy named Quincy, and Quincy had grown up. He was married. He had a really good job, and one day he had a family and everything. And one day he lost his job,
Yeah.
and his wife ended up leaving him. She took like all the kids, and that got him to start into drinking. And he wasn't a drinker before, and he started using drinking as a copinism to actually get over that. And it actually got him to an alcoholic, and actually ended up, making him
Oh yeah.
homeless.
Yeah.
If the next step for him would have been, self-deletion, then it wouldn't have been a start from just him as a child. Some things happen just periodically through people's lives where it can just be a trigger effect, a snowball effect, to where it gets them to certain things. So
Yeah.
it's really hard to really pinpoint where certain aspects start. But when everybody is like at that point to where they feel like they no longer need to be here, it comes from a sense of just not feeling validated or feeling loved or feeling like worthy enough to be in this space and this time that we are on Earth. And that should never be the case, because we all have our purpose and our our purpose of being here. But people get to that point when you feel like I'm better. Nobody's gonna miss me when I'm gone, or me existing doesn't affect anybody, and that's never the case, because it always happens. No matter who ends up self-deleting themselves, they're always missed afterwards. So
Mhm.
the person didn't feel that connection of what people would feel like when they were here. So they're going to miss it and not even see it, because you're not here anymore. They're gone.
Yeah, it kind of leaves a residue with the people who are left behind.
Hmm.
And also too, it's like I feel like, and I think you said this already in a certain way, if we could just recognize, not be so busy in our heads, and recognize other people and tell them every day that we love them or we miss them, or whatever. I mean, hugs used to be a thing. I mean, now they're coming back a little bit, more, but it's like connection. It's just connection. It's just
Right.
human connection. It doesn't matter about anything else. It's like my soul is the same as your soul is the same as all the souls on the planet. um,
Right.
Look at it that way, and then you see someone who's struggling, or even if they're not, just already having the mentality where you go out in public and you open the door for somebody, or you say hi, or you smile at them. You don't know what they're going through. If you smile at them and it takes you 2 seconds to do that, you have no
Right.
idea what that's going to do for them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
so I think that's, yeah, so thank you for sharing that, because I think that I think it's really important for people to, we just recognize our humanity, instead of getting so wrapped up in the chaos and the crap. Everyone's going through that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and in many
100%.
different ways, for many different reasons, so yeah. So that was
Yeah.
that's
I
so
agree.
yeah. Were these like these stories for you, or was there anything else? Were these your catalysts for creating the mental health virtual realities, or was there something else that just kind of was like, go do this? Some,
Uh, no, I would say the things that I grew up with always had me interested in mental health. I think that, you know, I remember seeing this book a long time ago, and in the book there was a bunch of different pictures. It was like a building, and in every picture of like the apartment building, there was something going on in the building. So you saw somebody like cooking. In a different picture, you saw somebody that was upside down. Another picture of somebody arguing with their wife. And it was really just supposed to just like put a picture that everybody's going through different things, even if you're under the same building, under the same roof. There's so many different stories that are going on, and they all typically, no matter what going on in somebody's life, it always kind of centers around the mental side of things, how we act, how we interact, how we communicate with people, how we just go about our day to day, how we're feeling that day. It always strives around just the mental. So I was always just fascinated by it. Those things that I mentioned before, piqued my interest, but I was always going to go into the mental side of things for sure, especially after my grandma.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why you didn't become a therapist or a coach or something related to that.
Oh, I've always, because I'm really super into technology. So yeah, so it would for me it would just be like I would. This was like the best of both worlds of getting kind of what I wanted to be able to do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And that makes sense. And it's like that's really cool though, because you took something that you were passionate about, you used your experience and you turned it into something that could help other people.
Right. Yeah, 'cause I always look at it that way too. There's always a bunch of ways to help people. Like, so I give the example of sports. Everybody wants to make it to the NBA or the NFL, but there's also different things you can do to affect people the same way. Where you can be an anchor, you can be a coach, you can be a referee.
Mhm.
If you're in there, if your passion is really basketball, then getting in there in some aspect, you'll still feel fulfilled and satisfied.
Yeah, and there's still a mental health capacity to that too, because you're
Right.
still dealing with people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you still get to know these people and you still get to, guide them or help them when they need it or whatever. So it's always there. It feels like it's
Always.
like current to
Yeah.
all things in life for
Yeah.
us humans. So
Yeah.
yeah. Do you
So yeah, what I
go
oh,
ahead.
what'd you say? I
No.
was gonna say what I found in most instances of people that I've just known that have mental health issues, it usually stems from either anxiety or a type of depression.
Mhm.
Which I always look at anxiety, people being anxious, is because they're looking for what's going to happen in the future. In depression, people are usually typically looking at what happened in the past. So I always try to tell people or look at what's just focus on the present. If you focus on the present, it's the most realist aspect of life that you can really achieve because you're right there in the moment. And if you're right there in the moment, not worrying about the past or the future, but being hopeful of the future and being appreciative of the past, then I think it's the best way to really focus on your mental health.
How would you recommend people find hope when it feels like there's no hope?
That's a great question. So I look at it that way as, me personally, I go to the gym a lot. And I know you're like, why are you going to the gym? But when I go in the gym
Because
sometimes,
exercise works on that stuff.
it works. It does
It
work.
does.
But when I go into the gym, I look to the left and there's somebody who's in better shape than me. I look to the right and there's somebody who would probably kill to be in my shape. So I always just realize that everybody has their own story, their own thing. But I think it's really life is really like a swimmer in a race. If you look to the right and look to the left while you're swimming against the race, you might end up losing and falling behind. You just can only focus on your race. If you're focused on the future, let's say that you're hopeless because you don't think something's going to happen. Typically, it's because you don't think it's going to happen with the time frame that you want it to happen. So a lot of people be like, I am stressed out because I want to get a house. I want to be successful by 30. But who's to say why you got to be successful by 30? Why not just say I want to be successful when it's time for me to be successful?
Well, because we've been programmed to believe we need to be successful by
That
30.
is true. And success looks differently for everybody,
Mhm.
right? So the biggest thing is to say, where am I at right now? And just really give yourself kudos and pass on the back for every small little thing that you accomplished, right? So if you were literally on a diet and you messed up your diet on the last day, don't say, oh, I messed up on my diet. Say, I did 6 days of being really good at my diet.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
So here's the thing with the mess up on the diet or anything like that. Our endorphins get kicked up when we eat something that we love because love kicks up our endorphins. So if you
Right.
mess up on the diet or anything else in life, doing something that you love, it's technically not a mess up.
I love that.
I do too. I thought that was like, wait, whoa, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So do you happen to remember the name of that book that you were talking about? Because I think somebody might want it. I don't know. I usually add it into the description.
Yeah, the book was in middle school summer reading list. So I don't remember the name of it because there were so many books during the summer you had to read.
But
But I just remember that out of all of them.
yeah, and when you started talking about it, I started visualizing. Wait, I remember that. I remember seeing
Yeah.
it was like a big apartment building or something,
Yep.
and it had all these different, so you
People in
could
it.
just get a bird's eye
It
view of
was a it
life.
was an older book. It
Yeah,
wasn't like it was like a classical old book.
yeah.
So
Careful with the classical word.
yeah. All right.
You're in your mid 30s or late 30s, right?
Yeah, mid.
Yeah. So careful with that class.
Classical, yeah. I think it was like I would say maybe like 1800, early 1900s, if that. Yeah, it's a
Are
pretty
you
older.
sure, or is that your brain thinking that it was that old
Yeah,
because it was?
maybe it was probably because of that old. Because I think the picture didn't have color, so probably is my brain telling me that.
I think it might, because I used to read books that didn't have color, that were from like books from the 60s and the 50s didn't have color either.
Oh,
So I don't think it
1800.
was that old, but I don't know if people were in apartment buildings that were that tall back then, or unless it wasn't that tall, because I'm imagining a very tall
Yeah,
apartment building. I don't know. I just think that's funny because I have to pick on your age so I can pick on mine.
yeah, and it may have not been an apartment. It may have just been like an old hotel. I remember just a really big building.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
same windows.
yeah. So, with your own healing work, use that as a guide. How do you see people's individual healing work contributing to the larger societal transformation?
Well, I think that it starts with getting people like aware of the things that we provide with VR, AI, all the different technology. Technology has the capability of really just connecting people on a wider sense.
Mhm.
So that's the benefit of it, and I think that when people get more adopted, because there's always this educational phase that people have to understand and learn technology and trust it. Even with AI, people had to learn and start using it. Now they're trying to ban it from schools because people want to use it for tests and things of that nature. But there's always that learning curve. So
Yeah.
once we get into that learning curve of people being able to say we can use these type of things to really help change mental health, I think it'll be very dramatic. There's a guy named Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he believes that AI will be so advanced in the future, 15, 20 years from now, to where it'll be able to diagnose people's mental illness before they even get it, and then be able to treat it for them right there on the spot. And I don't know if we're going to be there in 20 years and maybe 50 to 100 years, but I do see AI advancing to the point to where it kind of helps with a lot of different those type of areas.
If we have a transformation in society, people are actually healing, then there doesn't feel like a, to me, there doesn't feel like a reason. Like if everybody does their healing work and everybody stay centered in the present moment, and everybody, is meditating, or they're doing whatever all this stuff is, why would we have issues with mental health if people are staying centered?
Yeah, so for the general population, and as the population grows, I think the hard it's you're gonna the more the population grows, it's gonna be harder to, and how more the technology grows, it's gonna be harder and harder to get more general people, the average person, to stay connected through just meditation, those type of techniques. Because the problem with and the good thing with technology is it's so disposable right now. You have your phone that you can literally download apps for your mental well-being. You have different webinars. You can go to your laptop and find different resources for that stuff. And what technology is going to grow, especially on the AI side and the VR side, people are going to be able to get healed a lot faster. And we live in a society that people want, they want to be able to have things fixed for them fast and right there on the moment. So you're always going to have that aspect. Of more you have this technology coming, the more people are just going to adopt to it. And unfortunately, people are going to, and because of that, people are going to lose human connection, which is going to be another whole problem by itself in the future as well too. So
Yeah, I think that's already kind of part of our issue at this point.
yeah, it's going to get way worse.
Yeah,
So
well, hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully not, because my concept and visual of the future, I try I try to look at it as things shifting. We're into a better space, you know. So it does, but not for the masses. You're right. I don't think that's going to be a thing for the masses. I think that there are going to be a huge chunk of people, though, that will be able to come into that space.
Absolutely. You're always going to have, yeah, definitely going to be a community out that says, I don't want the technology way of healing. I want the old fashioned,
Yeah, but that,
spiritual, feet to the ground, touching earth, getting that magnetism from the ground, healing. Yeah.
and that's really the only, I mean, once we were lifted off the ground from walking barefoot on the earth, that's when all of our mental illnesses started happening. That's when our physical illnesses, all these different things, because we're not getting the grounding from the earth. And
Right.
so there's a lot of people, there's a wave of people that are sort
Well,
of,
yeah, we're not breathing the same air, we're not eating the same foods, we're not, walking the same grounds. So there's definitely that was the beginning of losing the connection, and then now we're here, and now we're having places like Dubai that's tempering with like weathering, trying to change the weather, different forecasts. So I mean, there's if you could change it from sunny to hot whenever you want, the connection that you're going to need from the sun that day just won't be there. So it was always going to, this is why I say it's going to get worse. So,
well, yeah. So, and that's the thing. It's like, how do we also focus on not getting, like when we focus, our, about the law of attraction? For
somewhat,
that?
yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we tend to attract what we feel. Well, the biggest thing is how we feel. We attract how we feel. So if we feel sad, we're going to attract people in our lives who are sad. We feel angry, we're going to attract people in our lives who are angry. So the law of attraction works both ways. So you can feel and think about things that you want in the future, and you do that often enough and keep your mind off of the negative piece of it, you can also attract those more positive things into your life. But again, where you said earlier, you need to be in the centered space to be able to do that healing, doing the healing work from trauma and stuff like that, because the trauma knocks you off guard. But it also attracts the negative stuff. So that's what's so important about keeping, like, it's almost like keeping a blinder. And it's not easy. Trust me, it's not easy, because you could get caught up in technology, in social media, and get caught up in this cycle, or news. You get caught up in the cycle of fear and anger and, all that stuff. But if you make a conscious decision to kind of step away from that and just start focusing on, like, look at this cool human I'm talking to right now. None of that matters. It's in the moment. And what we're doing is we're building an energy or a vibration that's higher than the fear and the anger and the sadness and all that other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Just by having this
No,
conversation.
no. And I'm 100% agree that is, what will be needed.
Mm-hmm.
And because I think as like technology grows, you lose that human connection, but it's important. And I think the way that you keep that human connection is honestly having people have conversations and listening to people like you, listening to people that support those type of ideas and being in that type of community as well. So that's how you really keep people understanding, like, do you know if you go outside and just be barefoot that you can actually get the magnetism from the earth, and if you're breathing the actual fresh air, how it's more beneficial for you,
Mm-hmm.
having those conversations, because people won't be able to see that unless you actually keep having those conversations.
And those conversations, that's it. I mean, that's why I do this, because I feel like I don't know everything. And I want to learn things. Also research. I love researching. I love listening to other people's ways that they've done things, or experiences, or whatever, or who they are. Just in general, it's like you got to know people to understand what humanity is, or because you can't do it from this little spot right here. This is me, and I think this is me, and I'm the most important. Whatever. That's not how it works. It's like
Right.
if you don't connect with other humans, you don't understand. And I have, there are locations in this country, and I've experienced it, where people grow up in, that's all they know, where they grew up. And I remember I went to Texas one time, and I was talking to somebody that I had met, and she's like, "Oh, I was telling her all about how beautiful North Carolina was, right? And the trees, and how, whatever. I was just explaining what it was, because North Carolina is a beautiful state, right?
Right.
And she's like, I think she was living in West Texas. And she's like, oh no, I would never go to North
Mm-hmm.
Carolina. And I'm like, okay, so I was born in Germany and I have a thing about learning about culture. So I'm just sitting there going, trying to understand why she wouldn't want to leave that
Yeah, yeah.
particular thing because that's all she knows, right? So a few years later, she must have remembered the conversation because she had managed to get a trip or a vacation or something to North Carolina. And she comes up to me and she goes, oh my, you were right.
Yeah,
You have to expand. You just
yeah,
have to expand so you know what the world is, right?
yeah,
You're
absolutely.
never going to understand who you are.
Right, that's true. Traveling
Yeah.
helps with that a lot.
Yeah. So in that energy, how would you define awakening?
Wow. So, awakening for me, when I think of that, is I first believe that it really comes to understanding who you are, understanding that you are really, if you really think about it, you're really just so small in the grand scheme of how big the universe is.
More
And
than
when
you
you
know.
realize that you're so small, but you can make big impacts and little ripples that make a bigger impact, that's the real awakening part. It comes from a real humbling experience of knowing that you don't know everything, but you're willing to know what you can know. And and if you don't know the answers, being humble about it,
Mm-hmm,
trying to figure out, being constantly hungry to learn more,
mm-hmm.
experiencing things. When you get to that sense of humbleness, to where you say that I am just me, I am just here, but I am a blank canvas and I can just fill it up with as much as you want.
Yeah.
That's the awakening part. If you come into life and really thinking that you're already, you already learned enough, you already grew enough, there's no, you've never even hit the awakening side of things.
Mm-mm.
It really starts when you realize that you are who you are and you're just a simple person. I remember there was, I think it was, um, Alexander Caesar, and he was walking through, um, one of the gardens one day, and he would always keep somebody around him. And if he was walking through a crowd and the crowd was cheering for him, the one person's job was just whisper in his ear that you're only just a man. And you're only just a man. All these people cheering for you, screaming for you, but you're only just a man. That's the awakening part.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really powerful. Thank you for that. And I want to add something to this that I just learned recently, and I think this will make it even more um, awakening. I guess is the best word I can find for our viewers and listeners. Is that if you could just shut your eyes and imagine the universe. Let's start there. This little blip, like right in the middle of the universe, right? And they've already discovered like multiverses. And if you look on it, and I've had this experience where I'm sitting on the earth in the spot that I'm in Florida, and you know how when you look at the picture of the earth
Yeah.
and you're looking down onto the earth and you can see like different aspects of all the countries and the water and all that kind of thing. But when we're on the earth, we're not looking down when we look at the sky. Technically, where I am in the United States, and it also obviously depends on where you are in the world, you're looking out. It's
Hmm.
like a direct, it's a horizontal-ish line out to the universe. It's not
Right.
down or up or whatever. So when you think about it that way, it kind of gives you an idea really of how, not how powerless we are, but how small we are compared to how big this universe is,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. If you was to take a cup and you would take that cup and you would go to an ocean and you would put that cup under the ocean and, in the water and look at it, and then you would take a microscope and just try to find like the smallest like germ or whatever is in there, that will still even be not even a decimal or a fraction of how small we are compared to the whole
Mhm,
universe.
mhm. Yeah. And then I'm going to go even deeper into this. You ready?
Hmm.
So let's imagine, just imagine yourself. You can close your eyes again. You imagine yourself. And I'm actually taking a course in ancestral healing right now.
Hmm.
And this was something I got from that course. And basically, what they explained was you think about who you are, right? You've got two grandparents, you've got four great grandparents, you've got 8 great great grandparents, right?
Mhm.
So every time you go back in your lineage, it compounds out.
Right.
So let's consider even, I don't know, 2,000 years ago. Like, how many ancestors do you really have? And really think about somewhere in that, like I saw the picture, it was like, here's little me,
Hmm.
right? And here's like this long line at the back, right? And
Yeah.
if you think about it that way, if there's such a long line at the back, wouldn't we be connected in some way?
Right.
Somehow, because of these intermarriages and all these different things. So let's go back to we're one again, this whole unit. So there's that small again, and there's that big of all of who came before us and
Right.
all the things we can learn from it, all the, but which to me is like so powerful, such a huge thing to understand because it makes me feel more grounded into, you know, focusing on what I want to do in this lifetime and all that kind of thing. Because we are, like you were saying, it's just a little dinghy in the ocean, and you pull the car
Yeah.
out, and it's the same thing because we're connected to an ocean of ancestors and ancient ones
Right.
ever,
Absolutely.
right? So I just wanted to share that because that was so profound for me when I heard it. Um,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah. How can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I think the best way is just follow me on LinkedIn. I think that's all. I know maybe like the most old fashioned way, but maybe it's not old because LinkedIn has like been like 10, 15 years. But yeah, follow me on LinkedIn. Stay connected with me. Catch me here when this drops. Let me know. Feel free to reach out to me on email at themetaworldcreator at Yahoo if you have questions. And just protect your health, protect yourself, and protect your mental. So
Thank you. Yeah, and the link to LinkedIn will be in the description, but also to a post of the show will also be put up on LinkedIn. So
awesome.
I'm going
Yeah,
to tag you in LinkedIn so you can share it,
will do.
if
We'll
you're,
be
yeah, make
posting it
sure you
everywhere.
share it. Is there anything else that you'd like to share that you feel deeply about, especially before we wrap?
Oh, yeah. I just want to just leave off by saying that, everyone is going through something, whether you may think it's small or you may think it's big. In their eyes, it could be bigger or smaller. So just remember to always check on your family, check on your friends, check on your loved ones, even check on your enemies. Everybody has a purpose here. We're all in here. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned when going through this battle is just mental health and mental awareness is that when there's no enemy within, that the enemy outside can do us no harm. So when
Mm.
we take that and really embrace it, go out there and you can be the best version of yourself.
Oh, wow. That was profound. Thank you for that. I appreciate
Yeah,
it. Yeah. Listen up,
that's what.
people. There's no enemy without when there's no enemy within. You got to go in. You got to
Yeah,
connect with yourself and find that self love and find that sense of value inside of yourself because it is there.
it
Take it.
all starts within.
What was that?
It all starts within.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Terrance, thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and share your heart and your story and everything. And everyone who's watching or listening, thank you for being here on Awakening Soul Divinity. I'm Caroline Rena, and we'll see you on the next go round. Peace.
Thank you.